dragon claw, wing and scale. Come now, let's examine a tale of the greatest beast ever considered. Another episode of Big Flying Lizards.
Welcome to Big Flying Lizards, a dragon movie and television podcast. I am your host, Bryce Wilson, and we are back for another reaction, discussion, participation, and we're going to be discussing A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is premiering today, and it's actually going to be dropping in the next couple of minutes, so Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is an American fantasy drama television series created by Ira Parker and George R.R. Martin, a prequel to Game of Thrones. It is the third television series in Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire franchise and is an adaptation of the Tales of Duncan Egg novels. It stars Peter Claffey as Sir Duncan the Tall, a titular Hedge Knight, and Dexter Sol Ansel as his squire, Aegon Targaryen, Egg. The series premiered on January 18th, 2026 on HBO and will consist of 6 episodes. On November 2025, ahead of the first season premiere, the series renewed for a second season, which is expected to be released in 2027. And we have Nana in the chat already as Sir Duncan the Hunk. I think it's more aptly Sir Dunk the Hunk. But you know, I'm not going to be too nitpicky on these titles over here. Very similarly to what's going on in House of the Dragon, I haven't read these tales. I don't know that much of it. I've heard David Lightbringer discuss a little bit about it, saying that this is definitely more of an, how do I even say it? It's more of like a charming story rather than the nitty-gritty dark story that a Game of Thrones is. Not to say that there's not darkness in this story, but it's still going to be fun. I'm excited to see it. As I mentioned to those that have seen the posts, I'm not going to necessarily be posting the reactions that I make to my page. I'll do clips, but I've just been getting struck each time when I've tried releasing reactions. So I might start something that's either like a Google Drive that has all of the different reactions. I might set up a Patreon that just has like free or barely anything in there so people can go in and watch it. Because I really like to dive more into the reaction shots, and I think that I can have a lot of fun with it, and there's different things. I'm going to continue doing the reaction to The Mighty Nine. I know I've only done the first 2 episodes, but I'll be getting back into that shortly. It's just work and all the responsibilities of life have been holding me off from that. We do have a Vivi here. Vivi is here to see what's going on. Vivi is always a fan of hunks and shows, so Vivi's going to be here. But I really don't know that much about this show, other than it's going to be covering Sir Duncan the Tall, and it's going to be covering Aegon Targaryen, who is going to eventually be king. Aegon is the younger brother of Maester Aemond. And yeah, just right there, Nana's saying it, he's Dany's great-grandfather. So pretty close to what's going on in the Game of Thrones series, which everybody that is familiar with the show knows I am currently covering with the one and only Chase Hernandez. You can go and see in our Game of Thrones album, but we're discussing that right now, and we're a little over halfway with season 2, really having a lot of fun revisiting it. Again, there are so many things I want to do in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. I know I've really dropped the ball on this book club, and eventually someday when I get more free time, it's going to happen because I do love it, and I want to deep dive in. I also, be perfectly honest, I just started the 6th book in the Red Rising series, which is a Lightbringer, and I've been thoroughly enjoying that. Those of you that have not read the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown, please go give that a look because it is a fantastic. It's definitely more of a sci-fi, but it is one of those sci-fis that feels very fantasy, and I cannot recommend it enough to people. I've gotten Austin to read it. I've gotten my buddy Nick to read it. I've gotten my sister Riley to read it. It's just a carousel of people. Hey, Pierce Brown, I want my commission check for the amount of work I'm doing over here. I'm selling books for you. But we are coming down to the wire here because I do, very similarly to House of the Dragon, I want to get these episodes out as soon as possible just to be doing all of that. So I am probably going to be up all night editing it so we can get because again, after the episode, I'm going to be doing some just thoughts and jotting those down. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, a Hedge Knight. I just finished the episode and I'm going to quickly just do a run through of what happened in it, and then we'll just go ahead and discuss it. We are happy to talk. There's going to be a couple spoilers, but I don't think that you're going to really be ruined on anything, but here we go. The episode begins with Sir Duncan the Tall, Dunk, burying his master and knight, Sir Arlen of Pennytree. After considering his options, he takes Arlen's arms and the horses and decides to travel to a tourney in Ashford Meadows to make his name. On the road, Dunk stops in an inn where he encounters a bald, insolent child, later revealed to be Egg. Dunk orders the boy to tend to his horses, establishing their combative but playful initial dynamic. Inside the inn, a drunken, knife-wielding man pays for a meal with a Targaryen coin, creating a mystery. Dunk is shown traveling through the Reach, highlighting the show's different tone and immersive nature landscape. Dunk arrives at Ashford Meadows tournament grounds. He seeks out the Master of Games to enter the list. Dunk learns that he needs to be recognized by a knight to vouch for his credentials. He seeks Sir Manfred Dondarrion, whom Sir Arlen once served, but repeatedly turned away by Dondarrion's camp followers, Red and Boney. Dunk meets the knight Sir Stephen Fossaway and his likable cousin, Ryman Fossaway, while they train. Dunk establishes a camp by a river under an elm tree away from the main tourney crowds. Dunk watches a puppet show narrated by Tansel, a young woman who he becomes immediately smitten by. Invited by Raymond Fossaway, Dunk attends a lively party in the tent of Lionel Baratheon. The scene is full of humor, but Lionel casually dismisses Dunk's chances at the tournament. Dunk finally corners Sir Manfred Dondarrion, who pretends to not remember Sir Arlen and refuses to vouch for him, leaving Dunk in a bind. Dunk returns to his camp to find Egg has secretly followed him and prepared camp, cooking dinner. Touched by the boy's dedication, Dunk officially takes him on as a squire. The episode ends with Dunk and Egg bedding down under the stars, sharing a moment as a shooting star passes overhead, symbolizing their newfound partnership and potential luck. Now, again, a lot happened in this first episode, and I already know. I haven't been on Twitter. I haven't been on social media. I know for a fact, and if you want this to be a spoiler free for you, you might want to mute now, but I know that the fact because there's a scene where it's building up, it's getting intense. You hear the traditional music from the original Game of Thrones theme song, and then all of a sudden, a hard cut to Sir Duncan just shitting himself, making face while shit's just coming out of his ass. And it's just like, what is going on? And again, the show had already hinted and moved in a direction that was sort of emphasizing that this is not going to be the serious show that House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones is. But at the same time, it's literally going with poop humor. It's literally going with shit humor that is just leading on, and it's hilarious. I mean, you can see throughout the show that this is definitely a more whimsical, a more lighthearted show, and yeah, they got the message across loud and clear. But also, the show is not being done Ramin is not doing the music anymore. It is being done by Dan Romer. And I actually really like what Dan Romer is bringing. I don't think any of this music is going to be posted on Spotify or anything like that until the show ends. Luckily, we only have to wait about 6 episodes, so we'll be able to get it then. But at the same time, it was giving a lot of Freerin vibes. And I really, really enjoyed that side of it. Don't worry, we're going to get back into Freerin. I'm trying to determine somebody to bring on. It's going to be something that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be something that we really enjoy. But Dan Romer, it's definitely more folky. It's more hopeful and whimsical. It doesn't have that darkness and heaviness. And you can almost interpret that as Duncan being the commoner. Even though he is a knight, he's only a knight in name. He doesn't have the status. He doesn't have the money. I mean, he's definitely wealthier than the average commoner, but what else does he really have to his name? While in Game of Thrones, all the characters we're following are just these powerful men and women that have so much going on. And it's sort of the music represents the, I don't want to even say naivete that he has, but just there's a sense and air that he's not really bothered by the problems that Lionel Baratheon is going through with controlling the Stormlands. He's not going through the same issues that whoever the Lord Stark of Winterfell is going in, reading the North. And I'm going to highlight what you said right there, Nana. It almost has a touch of the Shire in it. I couldn't have said it better. It has the touch of the Shire, but also has a touch of like Freerin, and it has a touch of the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Like, it's just all sort of just meshed into this like whimsical, happy Game of Thrones. And I'm waiting for the ball to drop because this is Game of Thrones. This is George. Like, I know that this is a more happy story, but all happiness comes to an end eventually. I'm not naive in thinking that there's not going to be anything going there. And Nana, you're already just making me stuff is going to start happening. Okay, great. Well, I mean, technically it's already happening, but it's something curious to see there. I do really love, again, like this show feels significantly more like the Fellowship of the Ring than House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, because a lot of it is those nature shots. And I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia page because I believe that the show is almost primarily filmed in Northern Ireland. Yeah, Belfast, Northern Ireland is when the show primarily took place. And as somebody who's been to Ireland, I love Ireland. I want to go back to Ireland. And it's just such a beautiful part of the world. It feels like you're saying, Nana, it feels a lot more cozy. It feels a lot more of an adventure story rather than political intrigue and trying to tear down rivals there. Moving on, it's definitely setting us up. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't really get to see Duncan fight at all in this first episode. And I know, especially just from what people have said previously when they were talking about season 2 of House of the Dragon, a lot of people were like, oh, if you didn't like season 2 of House of the Dragon, you're going to hate Knight of the Seven Kingdoms because it is significantly less violence and fighting and a lot more just boop 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 boo. Which again, like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but this was already more entertaining than a lot of the stuff we were seeing in season 2 of House of the Dragon. And I mean, like, it just felt like there was no soul in season 2 of House of the Dragon. It seemed like they were just trying to get to from point A to point B, and point A being season 1 and point B being season 3. And I'm a firm believer that there's a way to do build-up episodes without derailing what the show is doing, and focus, like, you can build up storyline that's going on without just telling your audience like, oh, just wait, season 2 is going to end on a banger, don't you worry. But that's neither here nor there. Josh says, okay, but I feel like this is what truly shows the grimdark of Game of Thrones. Everything gets worse as time moves on. I agree, but if you go back and watch episode 1, there's a sense of dread in this first episode. There's a sense of dread, and you can feel it in the music. You can feel it in the scenes and the shots and the colors. The show literally opens up with Night's Watch members being murdered by White Walkers. Now, you can make the argument that this show opens up with a funeral for Sir Duncan's mentor and father-like figure, and that could be just foreshadowing of something to come. But at the same time, I don't know how I necessarily place that. I'd say that that's more significant because that's when he got knighted, or that's when he supposedly got knighted. Real quick, I'm going to highlight what Nana says right here. The color palettes used for the lighting tones makes a big difference between this and Game of Thrones. Absolutely. Like, there's so much more green, there's so much more yellow, there's so much more just vibrant life colors. While in Game of Thrones, it's all just almost the tundra filter that you're seeing. It all just has that sense of darkness. And again, like, there's a time and place. I feel like and again, I know Nana's saying that this is going to turn dark pretty quickly, which I'm excited to see. But if this was an entire season of this, I think I'd get a little sick of it. So relatively darker. Okay. Well, Nana's saying that's going to get relatively darker, which I'm happy for. I want there to be some sort of like conflict. I don't want it to just be like, oh shucks, I just want to be a knight and make a name for myself. Like, again, you can make a show for that, but that's not exactly what I'm gonna. Sorry, I'm just imagining if I would have watched this with Austin, how Austin would have reacted just seeing Duncan just shitting himself in the first part of the show. But I can imagine, because like, I know that the Targaryens that are in power right now are very much mad Targaryens. They're insane Targaryens. So I'm excited to see that. And I also have seen some of the armor that they have. I mean, I'm just even thinking right now, thinking back on the episode, and I feel like I almost have to go back and rewatch it to see who I'd award my fit pick to. But ironically enough, I'd probably award it to one of the camp followers. Not only did it look good and that they were hot in it, but like, it was very detailed. I mean, well, I think Nana's right here saying, wait, I think you've already seen 2 Targaryens in this episode. I mean, yes, I know I've seen one, and there is a possibility of a second, and we'll see where that goes. Like, I get where you're coming from with Lionel's fit pick, but for me, it's mainly just his earring that he had, that is. But we're not quite there. You liking this fit pick, Josh? The dragon neon. This is what I wore for the pride party at my work this last year. Moving on, when Duncan got turned away, he went and set up his own camp away from everything, and it's almost showing that he feels uncomfortable being around other knights or being around lords. He just doesn't feel like he fits in. It's sort of just a feeling that we all can relate to, because I think at one point or another, everybody has that sense that they don't fit in. The puppet show, this had a dragon in it. It was a puppet dragon, but it's still a dragon. A dragon's a dragon. And there's obviously going to be some sort of relationship between Duncan and the girl who was leading this, because he was clearly like very smitten by her and just all over that. But again, nothing really came out of it in this episode, so we'll just have to see what happens there. But easily the best part of this episode to me, and I think Nana would agree with this as well, the best part of this episode was the tent scene, the Baratheon tent. And I'll go ahead and include a clip right here, just seeing my reaction to seeing the tent.
Hungry. Always.
Oh my God. Okay, well, hold on. How cool is that? Like, this was Baratheons before they got bankrupt. I mean, look at that. They've got the stag carvings, and then they have the entire antlers over that. That looks so amazing. If they had a budget for it, I almost imagine that the throne room was just Baratheon antlers everywhere. George did not put this in the books, but I just want to imagine it in my head canon that they added antlers all over the Iron Throne to make it so that the swords had more of an antler look. I mean, if Robert didn't, he definitely should have. And he could have even claimed, like, this is all of the big game that I've hunted. It was so good. I mean, I was just blown away with the amount of antlers were there. We had a fun conversation talking about we wish how Robert would have just taken that and included that aesthetic. I loved every second of it, and I wish that we could have seen more of it. But we got to meet Lionel Baratheon, and Lionel is already such an amazing character. He's clearly insane, he's clearly intelligent, but he's also like oddly philosophical because he threatens Duncan because Duncan is just this commoner who's just in there and like eating the food. Like Nana and I were joking around while reacting to it that Duncan in this episode is us at a party. Like, we're not there to be dancing, we're not there to be meeting other people, we're there grabbing the turkey leg, tearing into that, eating the donuts that are on the table. And Lionel views him and is like, okay, what did you bring me? What did you bring me? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, my lord. I didn't bring you anything. And then he's like, well, if you didn't bring me something, you're clearly here to kill me. And he's, oh, no, my lord, I'm not here to kill you. He's like, well, why are you here? And he just holds up the donut for the food. And then they bonded and they started dancing together. And it was like an oddly erotic, like, dance that they're doing back and forth. Like, Lionel's trying to stomp on Duncan's feet, and Duncan's going back and trying to stomp on his feet. And they're just going back and forth. And there was this moment where they're both very drunk, and Duncan opening up about how he's not sure if he stands a chance against any of these lords who've been trained their entire life to fight in this tournament. And Lionel is like, well, you really don't have a chance. Like, that's the sad reality. And Duncan is like, well, then why do this? Like, why should I go and do this tournament? And Lionel essentially says there's honor in doing it, even though you know that you'll fail because you've said you've done it. And he's essentially giving him this odd little speech of like, it's better to have said you've tried and done something than to just given up and gone away. And I think that that's something that we're going to almost see repeated throughout this show, that Duncan is going to live by that mentality of it's better to have tried and failed than it is to have not tried. You're failing either way. I'm just a sucker for that mentality because who doesn't want one of those underdog stories of rising up and overcoming the odds? And it's just very sweet and very hopeful moment. And I also do just love the fact that Duncan is wearing Lionel's horned helmets the entire time that's going on there. Which after that, Duncan does return, which, okay, I do apologize. While Duncan was traveling to the tournament, he stopped by an inn, not to stay the night, oddly enough. He just stayed there to grab some food. And when he got there was a bald boy who was taking care of his horses and was sort of just being like really abrasive and talking back to him. And it was a sort of funny scene because Duncan was obviously raised by an old cranky man who each time Duncan would have spoken out or done something wrong, he got smacked upside the head. And you can tell that Duncan is trying to emulate that, but he doesn't have it in him to smack him upside the head. He keeps threatening to smack this kid upside the head, but he never actually does. And it's just this dynamic relationship where Duncan is this clearly just massive figure, but not an intellectual book reader, while this kid is clearly, like, again, I know it's a secret, but spoil the book's cat's out of the bag. This kid's going to be a Targaryen, so he's had education maesters to teach him, so he's just sort of running circles around Duncan, and it's just a fun little dynamic that they have. And this kid wants to be Duncan's squire. And this kid followed Duncan and set up his camp that he had set up aside from all the rest of the knights. Duncan relents and makes him the squire. I have a little mixed thoughts on it. It seems a little bit out of left field because if he was as adamant as he was before about not taking him on, it seems like it would be pretty easy just to send him on his way. But at the same time, I'm sure that Duncan sees a lot of himself in Egg. He sees this boy who's just so desperate to be a squire and to prove himself. And I'm sure that Egg is just not getting the chance to squire. And I'm curious to see why he doesn't squire with. I'm sure there would be literally hundreds of knights that'd be wanting to squire a Targaryen. And I'm sure Nana's just like, oh, Bryce, you're going to find out real quick why that is. But I'm still just really curious to see why he's deciding to try to go with a Hedge Knight that's here rather than going with a knight that got money that they can stay in inns, doesn't have to wear a rope belt, and I'm sure it's gonna be compelling. And there very much is that sweet moment where, again, this would never happen in Game of Thrones. This would never happen in Game of Thrones, where the episode literally ends with them laying underneath a tree. Well, they're joking around that the tree is their tent, like that's what they're staying under. But there's just this moment where they see a shooting star and they're like, hey, shooting stars bring good luck to those who see it. And Egg just makes the comment, we're the only ones that are sleeping out under the stars, so we're the only ones that get to see it. Sort of just giving this foreshadowing of good things to come. That would never happen in Game of Thrones. But all in all, just a really good episode. I'm really excited with the characters that we meet. I really love the dynamic that Egg and Duncan have. Peter Claffey as Sir Duncan and Dexter Soul Ansel as Aegon. Both of them are just doing such an amazing job. And then, of course, we do just have to shout out Daniel Ings, who is Sir Lionel Baratheon, who is going to be known as the Laughing Storm. And he definitely was giving off Laughing Storm vibes throughout this episode. But I'm excited to see what happens next week. That was the episode. There's only the 6 episodes this season, so it's going to be a little nutty. It's going to be a little nuts. Yeah, each are a half an hour. It's a little weird. It's I'm not going to complain. I will say, Josh, like, I don't know if anything longer would feel right, because I mean, and as you'll watch it and you'll understand what I mean. I think 30 minutes, 35 minutes is actually perfect with the story that they're trying to tell. Yeah, exactly, Nana. If they were to do an hour or anything like that, it'd be 3 episodes. But you say that, but there's going to be a second season. Like, they've already announced that there's going to be a second season. So, I don't know. But anyways, thank you guys for coming in and joining us. I am so excited to do this journey, and it's also just getting me excited for House of the Dragon to come back. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, share with your mom, share with your dad, share with your grandma, and until next time, peace.
That's all for this week's Dragon Lore. Takes cold and hot, spread shore to shore. Enjoyed yourself? Please join the squad. Follow on social media at BigLizPod. And one quick reminder before you go, to rate, review, and share the show. Thank you for listening. It means a lot. See you next week, same time, same spot.